Hi, this is Misha, and this video has been quite a long time in coming. This is on my semi-auto Czech SA-26 semi-auto. This was a submachine gun, or it could be the SA-24. We'll get to that in a bit. These kits have been on the market for quite some time and are very, very inexpensive. I mean, they're being sold for what scrap metal goes for. You can routinely find just the kit on sale for 50 bucks or 70 sometimes with the magazines and accessories. At most 100. I mean, they're just very inexpensive kits. But there just aren't that many folks building these into semi-autos that have really worked with the design, because it is a unique design. But this one came from Gun Builder. Actually, the owner of Gun Builder is acquaintances with my friend that did MK Gun Mods. So that's how I ran into him, and he's been building these Czech guns for a number of years now, really kind of perfecting the design, and it shows. So as always, we'll talk about the history a bit and then talk about the semi-auto conversion process. Now, I thought about bringing out a Soviet submachine gun. We have older videos on Czech guns where we compare the Russian Tokarev to the Czech Vz52, the Russian SKS to the Vz52 rifle, and of course the AK to the Vz58. However, I thought about grabbing the PPSH-41 or the PPS-43 to compare to this, but it's not really fair. Those guns were designed right before and during World War II. The Czech gun here came after World War II. Czechoslovakia was very much occupied by the Nazis, and after liberation, after the end of World War II, they wanted a new submachine gun to equip their infantry, really their main army. They were using some German equipment and some other things, but they wanted their own gun. So work began by the chief engineer at the factory we know today as CZ, the one in Brno. But yeah, the chief engineer there, Holček or Holčes, designed this in 1946. One of the early prototypes was the CZ447, which was the fourth prototype of the year 1947. It was chambered for 9x19 Parabellum, which was becoming a very, very common round at that time in Europe after the war. And it would be improved and adopted in 1948 as the Vz.48A for fixed stock and Vz.48B for folding stock, such as on this one here. These would go into production the following year. However, in 1950, there would be some changes. First off, they would change the nomenclature. Vz.48 would give way to SA-23 for the fixed stock and SA-25 for the folder. And then later, a short time later really, the Soviets would put increased pressure on Czechoslovakia to adopt a standard Comblok caliber 7.62x25 Tokarev, replacing 9x19, and so work began at CZ to redesign the submachine gun to fire it. So in 1951, the SA-24 fixed stock and SA-26 folding stock came out in the Tokarev cartridge, and these would go into service by 1952. If you notice, this is kind of the same thing that happened with the Vz52 rifle. It was originally chambered for 7.62-45, and through Soviet pressure had to be reworked to fire 7.62x39. And even the Vz52 pistol, which was produced in Tokarev, was originally designed in the 40s to fire 9x19. So you saw a lot of guns being rechambered and worked with in Czechoslovakia at the time. But since the older guns in 9x19, the 23 and the 25, had been produced for a couple of years, they had a number of them, and they would quickly declare them obsolescent in the Czech army, and many would be given to local law enforcement, what we would call police. They often call militia in Eastern Europe, but they're not militia in the military sense, they're law enforcement. So quite a few of the 9 mils would go to Czech law enforcement, and others would be sold off as surplus on the international market, and the 24 and 26s would replace them, and they would be in production through the 50s and really into the 60s, with production ending on those in 1968. So these were in production just a little bit under 2 decades, with all the 4 versions being counted together, and there's really very few differences. The reason these really didn't go much further, they were well received in the military in the 50s, but the Vz.48 really replaced a lot of these. It was a little more powerful, it wasn't much larger, so on and so forth. And for more of a PDW use, when someone needed a slightly smaller gun, there was the Vz61 Scorpion. So really this series, the Vz.48, the SA-23 through 26 series, became obsolete in the 60s because it was a middle ground. It was still used by the infantry, but as time would go on, it would be increasingly relegated, and then it would be declared obsolete and, put away in storage and eventually sold off as surplus to various nations around the world again, and obviously quite a few would end up in the USA and parts kits form, such as what happened with this one here. So that was the end of the Czech service, reasonably long time period. To be fair, submachine guns were falling out of vogue all around the world in the 60s and 70s, so this one's fate wasn't terribly unique, really. And they produced them in quite large numbers for a post-World War II submachine gun. But they also, as I said, had the Vz61 Scorpion, which we have a history video on if you're interested in those, which you should be because they're really neat guns. They're really interesting gun that started off the whole PDW thing. But that left this gun here. Well, outside of Czechoslovakia, this gun got to go to all the hot spots, all the just great vacation spots in the world. Cuba, Chile, South Africa. You got to go to Cambodia, which is a place that made Vietnam look like a picnic. Liberia. All those places. The Soviet Union used Czechoslovakia as kind of a client state to sell arms and trade arms to nations that they themselves did not want to deal directly with. So that's why these ended up going to a lot of interesting locales around the world. And of course, I'm sure there's a few in service there and there, even to this day. Well, that's pretty much the rundown of the history, so let's talk about the subgun, because this has a lot of interesting mechanical features. Now, Forgotten Weapons already did a video on a full auto one of these, and I want to take away from that. It's a great video and really cool. This one's just a semi, obviously. I don't do full autos. But it actually was able to retain most of the same features, except for, of course, the automatic fire as it's originally had, so it's pretty cool. Let's see, where to begin? Well, let's talk about this stock so I can get it out of the way. As you see, I've been using it as a foregrip. That's kind of the intent. It's a metal butt plate with a metal stock arm. If you look at the arm and own a Vz58, you will recognize this style. It's very similar, and since this came before the Vz58, basically they kind of took inspiration from this style of stock when they were doing it. Now to unfold it, it kind of latches up here. You just pull it forward and out, and there you go. Folds out. Your butt plate also folds up if you don't want to use it as a foregrip. It's reasonably stable for a submachine gun. Now, originally in full auto version, this would be a progressive trigger. A little bit back would be semi, and all the way back would be full, but since this is a semi only, it just does one. We do retain the original safety here, which just blocks the trigger. Simple but effective, since a lot of submachine guns don't have any kind of safety. We have a hooded front post sight. I'm going to point this at you folks. This is actually a Mauser style hood. It is a separate piece. with a blade sight here. We have a non-rotating front swivel here for the sling. This takes basically the same sling as the Vz52 rifle and later Vz58. The rear swivel, if we go back around here, is on this side here. It has a little bit of movement because it's kind of just a piece of wire looped around this block. Our rear sight is really interesting. It's kind of a square with different notches for different elevations, ranges. You just rotate it. The sides are serrated to make it easy to rotate. This is our highest range. It's kind of at an offset, if you see, because the pistol grip is slightly swept forward. Now on the 9mm guns, the pistol grip is more or less vertical. On the 7.62, to get the correct feed angle because of the tapered bottlenecked cartridge, it's tilted forward just a little bit. As you see, this kind of has synthetic grips. These are two parts with a plate in the back to hold them together, kind of a similar construction to the Vz52 pistol, and they are made of a kind of a similar Bakelite style material, phenolic resin, fiberglass type. As you see on the Vz58, it seems to be a wood reinforced polymer, not exactly Bakelite in the truest sense. It's also for this kind of lower handguard area here, which reminds me a lot of an MP40. And then we get to the magazine. Of course, it's in the grip. So that was a little stiff. In 7.62 Tokarev, these hold 32 rounds. That's the only size they ever made. It kind of has a trapezoidal shape because of the cartridge. When you're doing the 9x19, the 23-25, magazines could be either 24 or 40 rounds. The mag releases in the back of the grip here, relatively easy to get to, but also wouldn't be easily hit and knocked out. It's easier to use than you would think because you would kind of grab it and pull out as I did. Now, this is a style used in the Uzi. Many people say that Uzi Gal copied this when making the Uzi. As I say in our Uzi video, this doesn't seem to be true simply because he said he had never seen this gun when designing his. And to be fair, it did come out a couple of years before the Uzi, but just barely. I mean, these were in production in '49, but you know, the Uzi was already in a prototype stage by 1950. I think really, even though this was the first gun to use this system, it wasn't to go into production, I should say. It wasn't the first ever to be designed. The British actually kind of played around with this whole setup, including the bolt system we'll look at in a bit, in 1944, 1945, in their MCEM2 series. So there were some existing prototypes prior to this and the Uzi together, but they never went into full production. Also, speaking to the mag, we have a mag loading tool built into the side of the grip here. This would be fed with 8 round stripper clips to top your mag off. So 4 clips to completely fill up a mag. You would just put it in the side and load her up. Kind of reminds me, at least in principle, of the Steyr MP34. So this, you know, is a pretty unique submachine gun mechanically. We have an ejection port here. We'll use a telescoping bolt, which we'll look at in more detail in just a minute. That means most of your bolt's mass is out front, allowing the barrel to be more recessed into the receiver, hence there's not much back here, making it more compact. Obviously, the military version, the full auto, would be an open bolt. This is a closed bolt. We have pretty interesting charging handle here. It's serrated on both sides. It can be used as a forward assist. And that is pretty well a run through of this gun. It's not very large. It seems like it would be a little larger, but it's really not. With the folding stock or the fixed were 7 pounds and some change. It's a little bit heavier. With the fixed stock, I believe it's heavier. Sorry guys, I know one's a little bit heavier. I forgot to look before starting this. Apologies. But it's in the 7 pound range with either stock on it. With either the fixed stock or the folding stock deployed, we're at about 27 inches. With the folding stock folded, we're about 18 inches. And the original barrel length, which you see here does end here, is about 11¼ inches. So we just attached an extended flash hider to get it out to 16 on the carbine here. So it's a relatively long barrel, but it doesn't stick out much thanks to the telescoping design. So let's get into this and check out how we made this a semi-auto. Fold this back over for now. See if I can. Should have grabbed something to press this in with. If I can do it by hand, I will. If not, I'll grab something.
I just want to point out that you said check out.
Nice. I got it there. You just press in. Just check. You got a 2-piece thing here. You just press in that to screw the end cap off, or kind of rotate it off. And then your guts come out. This is the semi-bolt, and I brought over a full auto to show you. This is the original bolt, straight out of another parts kit. This is that charging handle. When it's in the gun, it's spring-loaded up, and when you start to pull it out, it pops down so it doesn't get in the way. As you see, most of the bolt's mass is in the front. It's kind of cut away down here. This is your bolt face back here. This piece is actually your ejector, and this is your recoil spring. You see it kind of interfaces on the side here when firing. Pretty neat and simple bolt system that all comes out in one packet. And so for the semi-auto, there wasn't just a whole lot of work that had to be done. Here is the semi-auto bolt. You notice it looks the same. We still have the same handle that retracts in. So all this mass out here. Your ejector is still here. Your main recoil spring is still here. It still attaches the same in the front. The only difference is we have a second spring added for a striker down here. See? And that has a floating firing pin that comes forward. And when the bolt's in the gun, the main part goes forward and this back part's caught by the original sear that would have normally kept the whole bolt back, an open bolt. Well, now it just keeps the striker back compressed, and when you pull the trigger, it comes forward and the firing pin hits the cartridge and the whole thing cycles quite normally. The trigger itself, because it was a progressive trigger, was quite easy to change to just semi-only by just taking the full auto stuff out and blocking it from really engaging there. So mechanically it's kept quite same, and that's really it for this assembly. If you want to take the barrel out, there are 2 knobs, one here, one here. You can get a wrench and unscrew those. If this wasn't an extended barrel, we can even use the bolt to unscrew. Actually has these little inlets in the bolt here to made up with that, so you can unscrew your barrel. So disassembly and all that is quite simple. Put this back in, kind of get it lined up a bit. Now it's going to hit the trigger system. So yeah, that pops up. You pull it back, it kind of recesses back in, and then you can just pop it up. You kind of got to wiggle it a bit to get it all completely lined up. And then you need to pull the trigger to let tension off the striker. See? And then it actually fits very flush in the back, no spring tension, no anything. So reassembly is even easier than disassembly was. You don't have to press that in, you just push it down and it locks in the back. That's it, and it's locked on. It's good. Sorry, my stock got me, guys. See? Striker fired SA Vz.24 or just SA-24, or excuse me, SA-26. So what about the 24 though? I mistakenly said it. Well, that's also quite easy. The only difference between the fixed stock and the folder is this one screw here. All you need is a screwdriver. So we're going to break for a second and we'll go from there. So we just unscrew this screw, just a standard flat head. That is it. This comes out. Now what keeps tension? There's a little coil spring in here that the screw goes through. So that's what you pull on when you pull the stock. So it's actually all self-contained. There's no spring to go flying out. If you take your fixed stock off, or folding stock off, here is our fixed stock for the 24 variant. Got a second sling swivel in the back. It's wood, metal butt plate. Pretty simple. It's got a little bracket that mates up right in here. Just kind of lock it in the round. And we screw it back. I mean, get it lined up, folks. Okay. So you can see there's really no difference except for literally the stock between the 24 and the 26. And it's interesting because they applied really a similar principle to the Vz.48 when you go from the fixed stock to the paratrooper. The receivers are identical. You just need to take a couple of screws out to swap between them. And this is the same. And here we have our fixed stock version, which I personally prefer. I'm just a fan of fixed stock guns. Alright, I put my bag, put her back in. And this would have been more of the standard infantry version, with the folding stock being more for paratrooper type use, you know, obviously. But I like this. I also like that you're just simply not committed to one or the other. So here we are. So if you live in a banned state and still want to do one of these, this is an option. Or if you're like me, just kind of like having one of everything, you don't need to have two guns, you just have one of each stock. And with these kits being so inexpensive, why not? Flip it around. As far as the accessories, like I said, the sling is very similar to the standard Czech sling of the era. Leather tab in the front. You cannot install it the other way. You can't put the leather in the back because it won't go through this thin sling swivel. There's a kind of a hump here, so you have to attach it this direction. We have a mag pouch here. It holds 5 of the 32 round mags. And it has a pocket on the side for the cleaning rod. It's our rod here. It's actually in 2 sections. What you do, this unscrews. And here you go. And actually you could screw as many of these together as you wanted. That's why these are both identical. They just had one size fits all in the sections. And you could just screw them together with this little end cap on for cleaning. Pretty nifty, I think. I want to say that probably the most famous place that carries these kits regularly is Apex Gun Parts. That's where I got mine from. They actually made me a very good deal on several kits and several accessories. The mags are very affordable for these right now. In fact, the whole thing is quite affordable. You can usually get an accessory set which has a pouch, 5 mags, cleaning rod, and sling for $50 or less. You can get the basic folding stock kit with just itself for about $50, or with 5 mags for about $65-$70 when they're on sale, at most $100 when not on sale. Now the fixed stock kits, because they're less common, they do go for more money. The fixed stock kits are about $120 on sale and $150 not on sale, but you do at least get 5 mags with that. So even at that, it's not a bad deal, and for people in band states or for weirdos who like me who just prefer fixed stocks, it's honestly worth a little extra. Plus, come on, it's wood. You got wood and Bakelite and steel. When I had Gun Builder do this for me, he tried to make it as close to Czech gray as possible. He used the original receiver sections where they were salvageable. The barrel is US made because the original barrels had to be cut up, but it is the 11¼ inch length for authenticity's sake. And that's really all I can tell you on this. I have to admit, when these kits have been around for a while, and I wasn't just super excited. I mean, there's so many submachine guns out there, you know, you can't have them all, and this isn't especially historically iconic, but the prices were just too good to be true, and a friend kind of, he would bring it up every 6-7 months, just mention it to me that, you know, these could be built, and he knew who could do it. Eventually I gave in when I was just wanting something new to play with. And I have to admit, this just came in this week, and I am just really happy with how it turned out. I like the feel of the gun. He did a very good job re-welding the receiver. I like that all the original features were kept. It doesn't really change its look and feel from the original much, with the change in open to closed bolt being the biggest. It seems very faithful to the original, and I like the ergonomics. It reminds me a lot of my Argentinian FMK3 semi-auto, or of course an old 80s IMI Model A Uzi. Has that whole aesthetic going on. Although I think it's a little lighter than an Uzi. I really do. But I've been planning this for quite some time, and finally it's done, so I thought we'd do a little video showing you. I'm sure it'll pop up in other videos as we do other stuff in the future. And again, if you like Czech firearms, please check out what else we've got to offer. See how I said Czech again there. And if you liked the video, please click like. And if you'd like to help support us, please check out the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and we'll catch you next time.